one of the reasons that anybody joins on the network side is that you're part of a public electricity service. You're about keeping the lights on. And I think it's often forgotten that actually a lot of our staff come from those local communities. They go to colleges in Dumfries and Galloway and Forth, and they're part of the energy system that's transforming as well. So we know very much the challenges that communities face, whether that's an urban community or a highly rural community. But when I joined the industry, it was almost unthinkable that Scotland would have no coal connected to the transmission system, that the large monoliths like Kenzie and Long Annet would have disappeared off the system. But in the last 10 years, we've seen a transformation in our energy system. Now 97% of our energy is sourced in Scotland from renewable sources, which is a remarkable feat. We have 11 gigawatts of renewables connected to a grid that serves a winter peak demand of between 4 and 5 gigawatts. And that transformation has happened by companies trying to be agile and respond and working in communities in a different aspect in terms of planning systems. I think the thing for me now is that isn't changing. The job is not done. In fact, the job is picking up pace because we need to now tackle heat and transport. We know that there needs to be a fundamental transformation of our heat and transport systems in order to become zero carbon. We've just published something called the Future Energy Scenarios. Now, those are often published by National Grid, and people look at them on a GB basis, but I don't like averages. You can have your feet in the fire and your head in the fridge, and somebody will say that you're average temperature, but the reality is that's not good for anyone. So what we've tried to do recently is make those future energy scenarios regionally specific to central and southern Scotland, to the communities that we serve, and to Merseyside and North Wales as well. And what you see from those in the distribution systems is that you will see from local communities and from other parties, we will see maybe a further 3 times the level of distributed generation seeking access to the distribution system. We will see quite literally hundreds of thousands of electric vehicles, whether that's public or private transport, hit our streets. And that requires a different type of thinking and a different type of engagement. So a big transformation in the way that we need to look at the future as we look ahead. And it's why I am so deeply interested in local energy systems. And I fundamentally believe, as does our board, that we have a mutually supportive role in ensuring that those community energy systems can make sure that we realise a better future quicker as a nation and as a society. But we need to think about not only the medical impact that the pandemic has had upon us, but the economic impacts that we face ahead, and the green recovery that will be part of the recovery of the nation's economy as well. One of the things I feel personally very, very strongly about is that community energy transition, relying on staff that come from those local communities, it has to create jobs and it has to create a better environment. It has to not only achieve net zero, but it has to create jobs within those local communities to really transform it in a rural setting and in an urban setting. So we were behind a scheme, a £20 million scheme as a company called the Green Economy Fund, which focused in 3 areas: education to transform capability and people's thinking about those local energy systems, about heat and the transport systems, and it invested in everything from looking at transforming the fabric of ageing buildings that were built in the post-war period, through to river hydro schemes in the heart of Edinburgh, through to community transport and electric vehicles schemes. In fact, I recently joked to our finance director that when I joined the electricity industry, I never thought I would have owned or sponsored so many buses of an electric nature, I hasten to add. We've also got into, I think we're very, very fortunate in Scotland to have the government that is forward thinking. That some of the level of renewables that we've seen connected to our system couldn't have happened without support. Real support, tangible support in changing the way that we look at planning in terms of our systems. And they've been right behind a project that we've been working on called Project PACE, which is about trying to help put more charging infrastructure on the streets, on public access charging, not domestic, not private, not commercial rental, but actually public access on Charge Point Scotland charging points within 2 local authorities which have a mix of rural and urban environments. Towns and communities that have suffered in sort of a post-industrial reduction in terms of economic output and are trying to transform, but also have large urban content within the areas that they serve as well. And we're also really proud of something called the Net Zero Communities Hub, which is targeted at the type of audience that I hope is joining this webinar this afternoon, about bringing information about the grid to those communities and about allowing an interaction, a direct interaction through multimedia with those communities in a more informed way, so that we can really develop that mutually supportive relationship in terms of bringing forward local energy systems. So local energy system is extremely important, and again I would emphasise in both an urban and a rural environment in order for us to achieve the transition. The demand that will be placed on the electricity system that I have responsibility for, and as I sit today, I have 3.5 million customers. Over 1 million of those customers sit in my priority services register. 31% of my customer base sits in that, and I have a direct responsibility to ensure that I understand their needs. And those needs vary significantly, for everything from people who are fuel poor to people who have different dependency, electrical dependency on the grid that serves us, that it can function, that we keep the lights on, that we keep that energy secure, we keep the quality of service up, and that we make sure that it's cost effective too. So I think that one of the things that it can often be the case, and I work in a hardcore engineering business that's customer focused and lives in the communities, and we focus a lot on how we will use our transformers and our cables differently, and how we will need to think about the rating of switchgear. But the reality is the contract with our customer needs to change going forward. That dynamic system that I envisage will have to occur electrically also has to occur in terms of the type of contract and relationship that we have with the customer. People will not only be passively expecting electricity to come out from our system, and will still depend on that in terms of security of supply, but we'll be looking to sell back onto that system in order to make sure that their investments in local community schemes work. And that raises big questions that I need your help, everybody's help that's on this call. It raises questions about the regulatory frameworks. I think we can be enthusiastic that at the start of his tenure, Jonathan Brearley highlighted a net zero action plan, but that needs to be transformed into real action. It needs a direction from government. In Britain, we see an abundance now of renewable energy, but that came from a direction from BEIS, from DEC before, and BEIS into the regulator as to what had to be achieved and how the system had to transform. And we need that in local energy as well. In fact, we need that in many areas in the context of that green recovery. There has to be careful consideration of the social impact and charging impacts, because when communities begin to change the way that we distribute those charges, it can equally have disproportionate effects on those communities that are fuel poor if they are not brought along on this journey. And I think that's something that we have to be absolutely conscious of, is that this has to be a just transition that creates jobs and ensures that those who are most disadvantaged in society also get access to public electricity, heating, transport systems, get the jobs from the communities, and do not see increasing electricity charges as a result of that. And that's the thing that has to be balanced in this, because somebody does have to pay us all in the system overall. And it's a stark reality we need to challenge. We've seen this year a record low demand in GB, partly because of COVID, as industry and commerce moved off the electricity system. Domestic demand went up on a greater dependence on that system, but it brought real challenges in terms of system operability. National Grid, the system operator, had to work with all the regional distribution system operators to contract with 3 gigawatts, over 3 gigawatts of distribution connected renewable demand just to keep the lights on. it needed to come off as demand dropped. The system had to keep in balance, and that had to be fast, responsive, new contracts that were put in place to ensure that security of supply. And local energy community systems need to think about that as well, particularly with changing weather patterns as we look forward. That quality of service and resilience has got to be maintained through this transition. And I do believe it's a revolution, but it's a people's revolution. It's a collaborative revolution. It's an exciting revolution. It takes us engaging with pioneering local energy projects that have been outlined today, that we are investing in through our Green Economy Fund. It takes that direct engagement, that learning, that understanding, thinking about it electrically, thinking about it economically, and thinking about it in terms of that customer contract to make this transition. And I guess I would leave you with the point that I don't just see that as our central role to help facilitate that. I see that as our central responsibility to help facilitate that change.